What's up guys, Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind, and today we will be reviewing For the Dark World. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this film's character development is more mediocre than my singing. And I will always love you. Ow. To be honest, Thor doesn't have a great deal of development in this film. It's all about his relationship with Jane Foster. And to be honest, I'm not very interested in that relationship. Not that it's not believable, however, I just think that this film needed to focus a lot more on the villains and the main plot than this side relationship. This kind of feels just like the plot is interfering with this relationship, which kind of annoys me. To be honest, the development done with the villain is very weak. The villain in this film is probably one of the worst in the MCU because he's just really weak and has no development whatsoever. Loki is still an interesting character, and it is good to see him going from just a pure villain to a more anti-hero type character. I did find that interesting. However, to be honest, the character development is lacking in quite a lot of the characters in this film. So I'm going to give character development a 4 out of 10 because they could have really improved on this. As for the performances, Chris Hemsworth does give a good performance as Thor. He's not close to Thor Ragnarok level yet. He's still not as funny a character as he could be. However, I think with what he was given, Chris Hemsworth does do a good job. Natalie Portman, once again, is a good actress. However, they really don't give her character any development whatsoever. She's not really relatable and she's quite a boring character. So it's not the actress's fault. She does a good job with what she's given. I think that's the thing with a lot of the performances in this film. They do a good job with what they're given. Christopher Eccleston as the villain could have been great. However, because of what he was given to perform with, his performance just feels a bit bland and doesn't really stand out the way some MCU villains do. So I'm going to give the performances a 4 out of 10 because they all do good with what they're given. It's just sad that what they're given isn't very good. The effects are probably the one element of this film which do stand out because, like the majority of MCU films, a lot of money goes into the effects, and the effects on Asgard do look good in this film. It looks better than the original Thor film. I think the main problem I have with the effects is they could have been a bit more ambitious with some of the Asgard stuff. The effects are decent, however, I just think with the technology that they had, they could have done a lot better. So the effects, I'm going to give an 8 out of 10 because there is room for improvement. They could have been a bit more ambitious. So the story and writing is the main problem with this film. Of course, this came out in 2013, so a year before Guardians of the Galaxy. So of course, Marvel Studios didn't know if a film entirely set in space would work. So this film is half set on Earth and half set in space. And to be honest, I think that's the main problem with this film because the stuff on Earth is really boring. I don't really get any enjoyment out of watching all of the scientists and all of the stuff happening on Earth. I just find that to be a bit of a time waster. It just, you know, it's not that relevant. Half the stuff that's happening on Earth is not really relevant to the plot. And as I've previously said, this film's plot feels shoehorned by the relationship between Thor and Jane Foster. And I'm sorry, I just don't think it's a very strong relationship. I don't think it's written well. So that just doesn't work for me. They do kill off Loki in this film, only to bring him back at the end of the film. So that seemed a bit like, okay, why was that done? That seems a bit stupid, especially if you've watched Thor Ragnarok. Then that feels even less emotional because Thor automatically knows that Loki isn't dead. Honestly, the main problem with this film's plot is its villain, because the villain is just written so poorly. And if I know people go on about the MCU having bad villains, I would say the Dark Elf in this film is really the standout of that, because they don't have a presence, their plan is stupid, and they don't leave an impression on the viewer. So I'm going to give the story and writing a 4 out of 10, because to be honest, I think it's written really poorly. So for this film's special recognition, I'm going to talk about just how little an impact this film has on the MCU. Honestly, apart from introducing the Ether, which is one of the Infinity Stones, and Loki faking his own death, you don't really need to watch this film. I think Thor Ragnarok is so unique in its style that it honestly feels like a different universe compared to Thor the Dark World, because Thor the Dark World just feels like your stereotypical comic book film. It doesn't really have a style of its own. It feels like this film was kind of just made because Phase 2 needed a Thor film. It's not like they really wanted to make it. This film was just an excuse to make a Thor film and introduce one of the Infinity Stones. I think that's all it was made for. It's a very low MCU film. I'd have to say, to be honest, it's my lowest ranking MCU film, just because it has no real style of its own, and out of all the MCU films released so far, it doesn't have an impact on me whatsoever. So I'm going to give the special recognition a 2 out of 10, because quite frankly, I find this film very disappointing. So in conclusion, Thor the Dark World is a very mediocre MCU film. It doesn't really have a style of its own, and the performances all seem a bit flat. And the main problem, the plot and the villain is two-dimensional as fuck, and the plot really doesn't exist. And that's why Thor the Dark World gets a very well-deserved 22 out of 50, which gives it a grade 4 ranking. Honestly, I don't watch this film even if I'm doing an MCU marathon, because I just don't enjoy it. I find it, as I've already said, a very disappointing film. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope that you enjoyed my Thor the Dark World movie review. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. And that concludes my series of reviewing the Thor films. If you want to see my review for Thor Ragnarok, it is one of the early videos on my channel. However, there will be a playlist for my Thor movie review, so it will be in there. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in another one. See ya!